There's a reason reality shows are wildly popular. We're all drawn to what's happening behind the curtain. And when it comes to your business, it's the exact same thing. Your audience wants to feel drawn in, and they want that peek behind the curtain. And people don't just want to know what you offer, they want to know who you are, how you work, and why you do what you do. And that's where behind the scenes content comes in. So if your marketing feels a little too polished, maybe too curated or too distant, it may be missing that one key ingredient that really builds real connection: authenticity. Hello and welcome to another episode of Digital Marketing Made Simple. I'm your host, Jenny Lyon, and today I want to show you how to use your behind the scene content to build trust and relatability, humanize your brand, and deepen the connection and conversions without oversharing. So let's get into it. Okay, so why does behind the scenes content work? Well, we buy from people who we trust. So showing that human side of your business really creates an emotional connection. It builds credibility and it fosters a sense of belonging. So behind the scenes content really creates what we in the marketing industry call transparent marketing. This is where your audience sees how things actually work and what makes them more likely to engage and buy. So people want to know the person behind the brand. So if you can show a little glimpse in the day-to-day of your everyday business life or personal life, this can really build a lot of brand equity. So what counts as behind the scenes content? Well, not everything has to be dramatic or emotional to count. Behind the scenes content can really be anything that gives people a sneak into your process, your team, the tools you use, or even your business mission. So it could be really simple things. So here's a few to jot down. It could be snippets from your workspace. It could be a look at how your offer is created or how you deliver the content. It could even be simple things like team meetings or collaborations or celebrations. And it could be personal stories, anything that's really related to your business journey. Things like, here's what I'm working on today type posts, or even candid video clips that you can easily film from your phone. So it's just those little things, and you can take your everyday content and really use that to pull in more of the personal behind the scenes content. So there's a lot of great ways that once you have this type of content, how you can share it. So some of our favorites are Instagram stories and reels. And why? Because they're fast, they're low effort, and they're perfect for showing a really casual look behind the scenes. So you see this a lot these days, especially in stories and reels. So definitely start sharing those. You can also drop candid updates right into your email newsletter. So maybe that's something like a photo of you working in your workspace, anything that you can share that kind of keeps things real. You could tie them into your podcast episodes. So maybe you talk through a lesson that you learned or something that's happening behind the mic. Let them see something. Maybe it's something in the podcast, creation process. So for example, my editor likes to clip pieces where I mess up, because I mess up a ton as I'm recording these because I just do them on the fly. And then they like to piece them together into really funny bloopers. So it's just a fun way to show that I don't just sit down and this podcast comes together or these videos come together in one take. It's a lot of editing, a lot of fixing things, and, a lot of leaving little things in that aren't right, just so it is more authentic. But I mess up a lot, so I don't think you'd want to see all of the mess ups. You could also share it in your blog content. So this is a great place to share like project recaps, or maybe updates that are happening within your business or your team, or even just something as simple as, this is kind of how we work. This is what our workflow looks like. It could also be on your website, like on your about page, something that kind of shows behind the scenes as far as your values. Maybe you share photos, maybe you share some sort of timelines. So, for example, on my About page, I try to create a lot of different things through that client journey for people to get to know a little bit about me and how I got to where I am, a little bit about my family, and I work with my husband, a little bit about my team and what that looks like. And, just that overall journey, it really does help to connect with your audience. So here's a little pro tip. Don't just post the behind the scenes content, use it as a launch pad for engagement. So it's a great way to ask your audience questions or invite them into the process. Next up is, well, how do you tie it into your offers, right? This is where it can get a little bit tricky. If you're posting a bunch of posts about your dog, and you're constantly showing videos and photos of your dog, how do you tie that back in unless, you work with dogs for a living? Your behind the scenes content doesn't have to be random, but it does work best when it relates back to your offers or to your expertise. So for example, for my business, if I'm building a funnel, then it's a really easy thing to show my screen while I'm mapping it out and then link through to, hey, these are the funnel services that we offer. Maybe we're writing email sequences. Well, we could share how to structure them and then link through to our email marketing services. Or something like hosting a client kickoff call. You could show that prep process and then invite people to book their own free strategy call with you to see it live and in action. So here's another pro tip. Let your offers live inside your behind the scenes content, not just follow it. So here's some common mistakes that you want to avoid when it comes to behind the scenes content. There's a fine line. You don't want to overshare the personal drama or things that are really going to dilute your authority, if that makes sense. You also don't want to post behind the scenes content just to post. It doesn't make any type of sense if it doesn't tie back to your services, your offers, your products. You want to tie it back to your brand in one way or another that makes sense. You don't want to share disorganized clips, anything that's going to confuse your audience. If they start going, what is happening here? I don't understand how this goes with this. It's time to rethink that. And you also don't want to make it all about you. You want to turn that lens around onto your audience. How does this help them? That is something that if you can do that, that makes all the difference in the world. So anytime that I'm creating content, I try to think, I don't want to talk about so much about myself, but I really want to talk about how what we're doing here can really help the audience. And remember, your audience isn't just watching just to be entertained. They're watching to see if they trust you enough to hire you. Okay, so here's some tips for staying consistent, because this is something I hear all the time from clients is, this is all great. I want to share all of these types of content and, advice in my own content, but how? How do I stay consistent in doing so when I have so many, plates spinning in the air? So the real key to behind the scenes content is to be real, but intentional. So what I like to do is I have it mapped out on my calendar. I have behind the scenes as part of my content calendar where once a week I try to share something into the behind the scenes. And then I keep with my team a shared folder of casual photos or videos to pull from. So this is even something that I struggle with because I'm one of those people where I don't like to mix work and pleasure. That's really tough for me because I have this just terrible ability to take something that's supposed to be fun and make it work related. So I always have these really big goals of, I go for a hike every morning and I tell myself I should really take some photos or videos to share the hike this morning. But then if I do that, then sometimes I get sucked into work brain. And then I start thinking about all these things I could be doing for the business when my morning hike is supposed to be for me. And it's supposed to be something that really kicks my day off. And it's a great way for me to clear my head. So I have a really hard time with that, whether it's, going for a hike in the morning or spending time with my husband or my family. I'm not one of those people that's taking photos or videos the whole time. But I need to get better at trying to separate those things so I can share more of that content. Another thing you can do is record short audio notes. So this is one that I've thought, maybe I could do that. And I had a client call a week or so ago where we were talking about this because my client struggles with this as well. And she really wanted a way to share. She actually goes on a morning walk, but again, she didn't want to get pulled into work. So the solution there was, well, why don't you record some short audio notes after the hike? That way you can use that content and turn it into posts without it conflicting with your personal time. Another thing you can do is use templates. So I love templates in like Canva or templates in Instagram, anything that you need to brand your casual content without overproducing it, right? So you see content that's really overproduced, over curated, and it just doesn't feel authentic. So if you're juggling content creation, you're running your business, those type of things can be really hard, and it's really easy to get sucked into, I'll just, use a template for everything. But you really want to make sure that even if you're using templates, to make sure that you're taking just a little bit of time to add that human touch to the content. So when it comes to behind the scenes content, it really does build connection and it will boost your engagement. When I do commit to it, I see a huge difference, and it gives your brand that really human element. And it works because it's not perfect. We're not perfect, and people want to buy from people, not from faceless brands. So behind the scenes content can be fun though, because it doesn't require you to have a script. You don't have to, show up polished. You don't have to, head into a studio or even have a social media team. It just really requires you to show up and to share and to, sprinkle in a little vulnerability and pair it with a clear message. When you do those things, it really does come together to build trust, and trust leads to conversions. It just does. So you just have to start small. You don't have to do it every single day. And I keep telling myself, I'm going to start small, but then something always comes up. But if you can start small, if you can stay consistent and remember that your audience wants to see what you're up to, they want a peek behind the curtain, that you're going to see a really big difference in how your audience is consuming and engaging with your content. And if you're like a lot of our clients where this is just not something that comes naturally, then please reach out. This is something we do probably on a daily basis. We're creating content strategies that really blend that polished marketing with real connection. And you can always do that with my marketing team, who has now taken all of those calls over for me, which feels amazing, at jennylyon.com/marketing. They are experts in all of the things that I talk about here every day. They're the ones who help me come up with the content. So they would absolutely love to help you with your content strategy, creation, whatever it is that you need. So you can always schedule those free calls and see, how we can help you, what makes sense. Okay, well, that's what I have for you this week. I hope that you found this content on how to create this behind the scenes content that really not only engages your audience, but engages them in a real human way, a real authentic way. I think a lot of times that little tiny thing there can be the one thing that's missing from your strategy. All right, well, that's what I have for you this week. I'll see you next time on another episode of Digital Marketing Made Simple. See you soon.